Welcome back to Reddit Whispers. I'm going to tell you a story, my story, and it's not one with a happy ending, or any ending at all, really. It's a story that's still being written in the silence of my house, in the spaces between words I can no longer say to my wife. It began on a Tuesday. I remember that because we always have tacos on Tuesdays, a stupid little tradition we started when our son Leo was old enough to hold one himself. It was a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. The sky outside our suburban window was the color of a faded bruise, the last light of a long autumn day bleeding away. Olivia was upstairs, giving Leo his bath. I could hear the faint sounds of splashing and his high-pitched giggles, a soundtrack to our life that I'd always taken for granted, like the hum of the refrigerator or the creak of the third step on the stairs. I was downstairs, cleaning up the dinner dishes, the scent of cumin and chili powder still hanging in the air. My laptop was open on the kitchen counter, a half-written work email staring accusingly at me. I was procrastinating, scrolling through some mindless news articles, when I decided to do a little online window shopping for Olivia's birthday. It was a month away, but I like to plan ahead. She'd mentioned wanting a new pair of running shoes, a specific brand and color she'd seen in a magazine. I typed the brand name into the search bar, and the usual suspects popped up: Amazon, Zappos, the brand's official site. But then something else caught my eye. It was a link to a shopping aggregator I'd never heard of, one of those sites that promises to find you the best deals from across the web. The name was generic, something like ShopSmart or Deal Finder. I can't even remember now. It seemed harmless enough. I clicked on it. The site was a mess of pop-up ads and flashing banners. I almost closed it immediately, annoyed at the digital clutter. But one of the ads, a banner at the top of the page, was for a dating site. "Find your perfect match tonight," it screamed in bright pink letters, with a picture of a ridiculously happy couple laughing on a beach. I snorted, a little bubble of amusement in my chest. Who falls for this stuff, I thought. But then my cursor drifted over the ad, and without any conscious thought, I clicked it. I don't know why. Maybe it was boredom, maybe it was a fleeting subconscious curiosity about a world I hadn't inhabited in over a decade. The dating site loaded. It was just as garish as the ad that had spawned it. A sea of smiling faces, all promising fun, adventure, and a cure for loneliness. I was about to close the tab to get back to the serious business of buying shoes for my wife, when a face in the collage of profiles snagged my attention. It was a flicker, a momentary recognition that my brain processed before I could consciously register it. I scrolled back up, my heart starting to beat a little faster. And there she was. It was Olivia. But it wasn't. The woman in the photo had Olivia's eyes, the same warm hazel that could crinkle at the corners when she laughed. She had Olivia's smile, the one that had always made me feel like I was the only person in the room. But everything else was different. Her hair, which she'd worn in a practical shoulder-length bob for as long as I could remember, was long and wavy, cascading over her shoulders in a way I hadn't seen since we were in college. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, a slinky red number that hugged her curves. She looked younger, more carefree. She looked available. My first thought was that it was a mistake. Someone had stolen her picture. It had to be a fake profile. People's photos get stolen from social media all the time, right? But then I looked closer. The photo was recent. I could see the new print she'd hung in our living room in the background, a blurry abstract of blues and greens. My blood ran cold. I clicked on the profile. My hand was shaking so badly that I had to steady it with my other hand. The username was Sunrise Seeker 7. Olivia had always been an early riser, the one to greet the dawn with a cup of coffee while I burrowed deeper under the covers. The coincidence was a punch to the gut. The profile itself was a masterpiece of fiction. Age, 34. Olivia was 38. Status, single. My breath hitched in my chest. Single. The word glared at me from the screen, a digital slap in the face. Children, none. We had a 6-year-old son upstairs, a beautiful, boisterous boy who was the center of our universe. Or so I thought.
The bio was even more devastating. It described a woman I didn't know, a woman who loved spontaneous weekend getaways, exploring new restaurants, and living life to the fullest. The Olivia I knew loved curling up on the couch with a good book, our well-worn copy of Pride and Prejudice her constant companion. The Olivia I knew was a homebody, her idea of a perfect night being a home-cooked meal and a movie with me and Leo. This woman, this Sunrise Seeker 7, was a stranger. She was an adventurer, a free spirit, a woman unburdened by the beautiful, messy realities of our life together. The profile said she was looking for a man who was confident, ambitious, and knew how to treat a woman. It was a laundry list of cliches, but each word was a fresh wound. Was I not confident? Was I not ambitious enough for her? Did she not think I treated her right? Questions swirled in my head, a dizzying, nauseating vortex of doubt and confusion. I scrolled down, my eyes scanning the details of her life, a life she had apparently fabricated from whole cloth. Her occupation was listed as freelance graphic designer. Olivia was an accountant, a damn good one too. She worked for a small local firm, and while she sometimes complained about the monotony of tax season, she took pride in her work, in the order and logic of numbers. This freelance graphic designer persona felt like a deliberate rejection of that life, of the woman she was with me. The profile was active. Online now, it said, a little green dot glowing next to her username like a beacon of betrayal. She was upstairs, not 20 feet away, giving our son a bath, and she was online now, available to a world of strange men. I felt a wave of nausea so intense that I had to grip the edge of the counter to keep from doubling over. The sounds from upstairs, Leo's happy shrieks and Olivia's gentle murmuring, suddenly sounded alien, like a broadcast from a distant, happier planet. I wanted to storm upstairs, to shove the laptop in her face and demand an explanation. I wanted to scream, to cry, to break something. But I was paralyzed. My mind was a chaotic jumble of disbelief and a pain so sharp it felt physical. This couldn't be real. There had to be an explanation.
A joke, a misunderstanding, a bizarre social experiment, anything but the obvious, ugly truth that was staring me in the face. I thought about our life together, the 15 years we'd shared. We'd met in college, two idealistic kids who fell in love over late-night study sessions and cheap pizza. We'd built a life together, brick by brick, a house in the suburbs, a son we adored, a comfortable routine that felt safe and secure. Had it all been a lie? Was the woman I shared my bed with, the mother of my child, a stranger? I looked at the photo again, at the smiling woman in the red dress. It was Olivia's face, but the eyes held a spark of something I hadn't seen in years. A restlessness, a yearning for something more. Or maybe I was just projecting my own fears onto a digital image. I didn't know what to think, what to feel. All I knew was that in the space of a few minutes, the solid ground beneath my feet had crumbled and I was falling. I closed the laptop, the click of the lid sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet kitchen. I stood there for a long time, the silence of the house pressing in on me, the smell of tacos and betrayal thick in the air. I could hear the water draining from the bathtub upstairs, the sound of Leo being bundled into a towel. I could hear Olivia's footsteps as she moved around his room, getting him ready for bed. The familiar sounds of our evening routine, sounds that had always brought me a sense of comfort and peace, now felt like a cruel mockery. Each footstep, each giggle was a reminder of the life I thought I had, the life that might now be a complete fabrication. I wanted to go up there, to kiss my son goodnight, to look my wife in the eyes and see if I could find any trace of the woman on the screen. But I couldn't move. I was a statue in my own kitchen, a silent witness to the demolition of my world. The ordinary Tuesday was no longer ordinary. It was the day my life split into two distinct parts, the before and the devastating, uncertain after. The days that followed were a blur of feigned normalcy. I went to work, I smiled at my colleagues, I sat in meetings and pretended to care about quarterly reports and profit margins. But my mind was elsewhere, trapped in a dark, obsessive loop.
Every night, after Olivia and Leo were asleep, I would creep downstairs, the creak of the third step a guilty announcement in the silent house. I would open my laptop, my heart pounding in my chest, and I would descend into the rabbit hole of Sunrise Seeker 7's life. It became a ritual, a form of self-torture that I couldn't resist. I created a fake profile of my own, a man named Mark, a generic, non-threatening persona. I chose a stock photo of a blandly handsome man, the kind of face you'd forget the moment you looked away. I needed to see more. I needed to understand. I sent her a message, something simple and innocuous. "Hey, I saw your profile and was intrigued. You have a beautiful smile." I felt like a creep, a spy in my own marriage. But the need to know, to unravel this mystery, was a physical ache in my chest. She replied within an hour. "Thanks, Mark. I appreciate that." Her message was brief, almost dismissive, but it was enough. It was a confirmation that this wasn't a dormant profile, a relic from a past life. This was active. This was real.
Over the next few weeks, I engaged in a stilted, awkward online courtship with my own wife. I learned more about the woman she was pretending to be. This fictional Olivia, this Jen, as she called herself on the site, was a woman of contradictions. She was a yoga enthusiast who loved wine tasting. She was a world traveler who was also a homebody. She was everything and nothing, a carefully curated collection of desirable traits designed to appeal to the widest possible audience. I became an expert in her lies. I knew which photos she used to get the most attention. I learned the cadence of her online voice, the way she used emojis to convey a sense of playful detachment. I watched as she flirted with other men, her messages a mix of witty banter and veiled invitations. Each message was a tiny paper cut on my soul. I saw her tell a man named Chris, a divorced father of two, that she was tired of the games and just wanted to find a real connection. I read her message to a man named David, a pilot who traveled the world, where she said she was looking for an adventure. An adventure? Was our life together not enough of an adventure for her? Was raising a child, building a home, growing old together not a grand enough journey? The investigation took over my life. I became a digital ghost, haunting the corners of her online world. I checked her phone when she was in the shower, my hands shaking as I scrolled through her messages. She was careful, though. She used a separate messaging app, one I didn't recognize, and she cleared her conversations regularly. But she wasn't careful enough. One night, I found a string of messages with a man named Alex. Their conversation was more than just casual flirting. They were making plans. They were going to meet. "I can't wait to finally meet you in person," he wrote. "I feel like I already know you." "Me too," she replied, with a winking emoji that made my stomach turn. They were planning to meet for drinks at a bar downtown, a place we'd been to once for a friend's birthday. The date was set for the following Friday, a night she had told me she was going to a yoga class with a friend from work. The lie was so casual, so effortless, that it took my breath away. The paranoia began to consume me. I started seeing betrayal everywhere. A new dress hanging in her closet, a late night at the office, a phone call she took in another room. Every mundane event was now filtered through the lens of my suspicion. I became a stranger in my own home, a silent observer of a life I no longer understood. I would watch her as she played with Leo, her face a mask of maternal love, and I would wonder who she really was. Was she the devoted mother, the loving wife, or was she Sunrise Seeker 7, the adventurous single woman looking for a thrill? The two identities seemed impossible to reconcile, and yet they existed within the same person, the woman I had promised to love and cherish for the rest of my life. The stress was taking a physical toll. I lost weight, I couldn't sleep, I was irritable and distant, and Olivia started to notice. "Is everything okay, Ethan?" she asked one night, her voice laced with concern. "You seem so far away lately." I wanted to scream at her, to confront her with the evidence I had so painstakingly gathered, but I couldn't. The words were stuck in my throat, choked by a toxic mix of anger, fear, and a love that refused to die. What if I was wrong?
What if there was a reasonable explanation for all of this? And what if I was right? What would I do then? The thought of our life together ending, of Leo growing up in a broken home, was a pain too great to bear. So I lied. "I'm fine," I said, my voice hollow. "Just stressed with work." She accepted my answer without question, and a part of me hated her for it. I wanted her to see the pain in my eyes, to know that I knew. But she was oblivious, lost in her own secret world. The Friday of her planned meeting with Alex arrived, a dark cloud on the horizon of my week. I felt a sense of dread so profound that it was almost paralyzing. I went through the motions of the day, a robot programmed to perform the tasks of a husband and father.
I kissed her goodbye as she left for her yoga class, the taste of her lie bitter on my lips. I watched from the window as she drove away, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. I had a choice to make. I could stay home, drown my sorrows in a bottle of whiskey, and pretend that none of this was happening. Or I could follow her. I could see for myself what she was doing, who she was meeting. I could finally have the truth, no matter how ugly it was. The decision was agonizing, but I knew what I had to do. I couldn't live in this limbo of suspicion and doubt any longer. I needed to know. I got in my car and drove to the bar downtown, the one where she was meeting him. I parked across the street, my car hidden in the shadows of a tall building. I sat there, watching the entrance, my hands clenched on the steering wheel, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I felt like a character in a cheap detective novel, a cliché of a wronged husband. But this wasn't fiction. This was my life, and I was about to watch it fall apart. I waited for what felt like an eternity. People came and went, their laughter and chatter a stark contrast to the silent, suffocating tension in my car. And then I saw her. She was wearing the red dress from her profile picture, a splash of vibrant color against the drab cityscape. She looked beautiful, and the sight of her was a fresh stab of pain. She stood by the entrance, checking her phone, a nervous energy about her. A few minutes later, a man approached her. He was tall, handsome, the kind of man you see in a cologne ad. He smiled, and she smiled back, a genuine, radiant smile that I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. They hugged, a casual, friendly embrace that somehow felt more intimate than a kiss. And then they walked into the bar together, disappearing into the warm glow of the interior, leaving me alone in the cold, dark street. I sat there for a long time. The image of them together burned into my retinas. The truth was no longer a matter of speculation. It was a cold, hard fact. My wife was living a double life, and I had just watched her walk into it. The drive home was a blur. I don't remember the traffic, the street lights, the familiar turns of our neighborhood. All I remember is the overwhelming feeling of emptiness, a hollow ache in the place where my heart used to be. When I got home, the house was quiet. Leo was asleep, and the babysitter was watching TV in the living room. I paid her, my hands moving on their own accord, my voice a distant echo in my ears. I went upstairs and stood in the doorway of Leo's room, watching him sleep, his small chest rising and falling with each innocent breath. A wave of love and a fierce protective instinct washed over me, and for the first time that night, I felt something other than pain. I felt a flicker of resolve. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if our marriage could be salvaged, but I knew one thing for sure. I would not let her lies destroy my son's life. I would protect him, no matter what it took. I went to our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed we had shared for over a decade. I looked around the room, at the photos on the nightstand, at the familiar objects that made up the landscape of our life together. It all felt like a movie set, a carefully constructed illusion that was about to be torn down. I waited for her to come home. I didn't know what I was going to say, what I was going to do. All I knew was that the time for silence was over. The time for investigation was over. The time for confrontation had begun, and I was ready.
The sound of her key in the front door was a gunshot in the silent house. It was just after 11, later than a yoga class would run. Each second of her approach up the stairs was an eternity. I heard her pause outside Leo's room, the soft click of his door opening and closing as she checked on him. It was a gesture of such tender, familiar motherhood that it almost broke me. How could this woman, this loving mother, be the same person who had just spent the evening with another man? The contradiction was a physical weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. She walked into our bedroom, a soft smile on her face. "Hey," she whispered, her voice a little breathless. "Sorry I'm late. We went out for a drink after class." She was a good liar. The lie was so smooth, so practiced, it was almost convincing. But I knew the truth. I had seen the truth. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, on the edge of the bed, and looked at her. I watched her smile faltered as a flicker of confusion, then concern, crossed her face. "Ethan, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I have," I said, my voice a low, gravelly thing I didn't recognize. "I've seen the ghost of my wife." She frowned, her head tilted to the side in a gesture of innocent bewilderment. "What are you talking about? I'm right here." I stood up, my legs feeling unsteady beneath me. I walked over to my laptop, which was sitting on the dresser. I opened it, the screen glowing in the dim light of the room. Her dating profile was still on the screen, a digital monument to her betrayal. I turned the laptop around and showed it to her. I watched her face as she registered what she was seeing. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her skin a pale, waxy yellow. Her eyes widened, a flicker of panic in their hazel depths. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. "Sunrise Seeker 7, I said, the name tasting like poison on my tongue. "Single, no children, looking for an adventure." She finally found her voice, a thin, reedy whisper. "Ethan, I can explain." "Can you?" I asked, my voice rising with an anger I could no longer contain. "Can you explain why you're on a dating website pretending to be a single, childless woman? Can you explain why you've been lying to me for months? Can you explain the red dress, Olivia, the one you were wearing tonight when you met Alex for drinks?" Her face crumpled, the mask of innocence shattering into a million pieces. The tears came then, hot and fast, streaming down her face. "You followed me?" she whispered, her voice a mix of disbelief and accusation. "I had to," I said, my voice breaking. "I had to know if the life we've built together, the life I've poured my heart and soul into, was real. And tonight, I got my answer." She sank onto the floor, her body racked with sobs. "It's not what you think," she choked out between gasps. I didn't. It was just a game." "A game?" I repeated, the word a bitter laugh in my throat. "You call this a game? You call lying to me, creating a fake life, meeting other men a game?" "I was lonely," she said, her voice small and broken. "You've been so distant lately, so wrapped up in your work. I felt invisible." The accusation was a stunning reversal, a desperate attempt to shift the blame. "I've been distant because I knew something was wrong," I shot back. "I've been living in a constant state of anxiety, of suspicion, because of you. Don't you dare try to pin this on me." She looked up at me, her face a mess of tears and mascara. "It was a mistake," she said, "a stupid, terrible mistake. But I never slept with anyone, Ethan, I swear. I needed to feel wanted. I needed to feel like someone saw me." Her words were a pathetic attempt at justification, a flimsy excuse for a betrayal that cut so deep it had severed something vital between us. "So you sought validation from strangers on the internet?" I asked, my voice dripping with contempt. You created a fantasy life because our real life wasn't good enough for you? No, she said, shaking her head. That's not it. I love our life. I love you. I lost myself somewhere along the way. I forgot who I was before I was a wife and a mother. This was a way to feel like that person again. I stared at her, this woman I had loved for half my life, and I felt nothing but a cold, hard knot of anger in my stomach. Her excuses, her rationalizations, they were all meaningless. She had broken the most fundamental promise of our marriage, the promise of honesty and trust, and she had done it with a casual, calculated deception that I found breathtaking in its cruelty. "Who are you?" I asked, the question hanging in the air between us, a stark and brutal indictment of everything we had become. She didn't have an answer. She just sat there, on the floor, weeping, a stranger in my home. The argument raged for hours, a toxic storm of accusations and recriminations. Every lie she had told, every secret she had kept was dragged out into the open, exposed in the harsh light of our shattered trust. She confessed to everything, the profile, the messages, the dates. She had met 2 other men before Alex, both for coffee, both ending with a polite but firm rejection from her. She insisted that it had never gone further than that she had never been physically unfaithful. But the distinction was meaningless to me. The betrayal wasn't about sex. It was about the lies. It was about the secret life she had been living, a life that I was not a part of. It was about the fact that she had looked me in the eye day after day and lied. As the sun began to rise, casting a pale gray light into our bedroom, we finally fell silent. We were exhausted, emotionally drained, with nothing left to say. The anger had subsided, leaving behind a vast, empty wasteland of pain and confusion. I looked at her, her face swollen and blotchy from crying, and I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger, a woman I didn't know, a woman who had shattered my world. I knew in that moment that our marriage, as I had known it, was over. The trust was gone, and I didn't know if it could ever be rebuilt. The love I had felt for her, a love that had been the bedrock of my life, was now buried under a mountain of deceit. "I need you to leave," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I need some time to think." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a fresh wave of panic. "No, Ethan, please," she begged. "Don't do this. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through this." "I don't know if I can," I said, the words a raw, painful truth. "I don't know if I can ever look at you again without seeing sunrise seeker." I packed a bag for her, my hands moving with a strange, detached efficiency. I put in her toothbrush, a change of clothes, the book she was reading. I was packing up a life, a shared history, and I felt nothing. The numbness was a mercy, a shield against the pain that was waiting for me just beneath the surface. She left without another word, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched from the window as her car pulled out of the driveway, its taillights disappearing into the pre-dawn darkness. The house was silent again, but this time the silence was different. It was heavy, oppressive, filled with the ghosts of what we had been. I went back to our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, the same spot where I had waited for her just a few hours before. The sun was fully up now, its rays streaming through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air.
A new day was dawning, but for me, it felt like the end of the world. I was alone, in a house that no longer felt like a home, with a future that was a terrifying blank canvas. The confrontation was over, but the war was just beginning. The war for my sanity, for my son's happiness, for a life that I could somehow piece back together from the wreckage of my broken marriage. And I had no idea if I was strong enough to win. The silence of the house was a physical presence, a heavy blanket that threatened to suffocate me. I walked through the rooms, our shared history mocking me from every corner. The photo on the mantelpiece, a smiling portrait of a happy family, was a cruel joke.
The coffee mug in the sink, the one with the silly cartoon dog she loved, was a relic from a life that no longer existed. I was adrift in a sea of memories, each one a painful reminder of what I had lost. The confrontation had been a necessary storm, a violent and destructive tempest that had ripped through our lives, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. But now, in the quiet aftermath, I was left to survey the damage, and the scale of it was overwhelming. I was a man without a country, a king without a kingdom. My castle had crumbled, and I was left standing in the ruins, alone. The days that followed Olivia's departure were a strange and disorienting limbo. The house was too quiet, too empty. Leo, with the uncanny intuition of a child, knew that something was wrong. "Where's Mommy?" he would ask, his small face a mask of confusion. I would give him a watered-down version of the truth, a carefully edited story about Mommy needing some time away to think. But he wasn't fooled. He could feel the tension, the sadness, the gaping hole that her absence had left in our lives. We spoke on the phone, Olivia and I. Our conversations were stilted, awkward, filled with the things we couldn't say. She was staying with her sister, a temporary arrangement that felt unnervingly permanent. She cried a lot. She apologized a lot. She begged me to let her come home. But I couldn't, not yet. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too raw. I needed space. I needed to breathe. I needed to figure out who I was without her. I started seeing a therapist, a kind, middle-aged woman with gentle eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. I sat in her comfortable beige office and I told her everything. I told her about the discovery, the investigation, the confrontation. I told her about the pain, the anger, the confusion. She listened patiently, without judgment, and when I was done, she said something that would stick with me for a long time. "Betrayal is not just about the act itself," she said. "It's about the shattering of your reality. The person you trusted most in the world has shown you that your reality was a lie. And now you have to rebuild it, piece by piece." She was right. My reality had been shattered. The life I had thought was so solid, so secure, had been built on a foundation of lies. And now I was left to pick up the pieces. I started to rebuild. I focused on Leo, pouring all of my energy into being the best father I could be. We went to the park, we built Lego castles, we read stories before bed. He was my anchor in the storm, my reason to get up in the morning. I also started to focus on myself. I started running again, something I hadn't done in years. I would pound the pavement, my breath coming in ragged gasps, the physical exertion a welcome distraction from the emotional turmoil in my head. I reconnected with old friends, men I had lost touch with in the comfortable cocoon of my marriage. We would grab a beer, watch a game, and talk about nothing and everything. It was a lifeline, a reminder that there was a world outside of my pain. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to build a new reality. It was a smaller, quieter reality, but it was mine. It was a reality based on the truth, however painful it might be. Olivia and I started going to marriage counseling. We sat in a room with a stranger and we talked about our marriage in a way we never had before. We talked about the good times, the bad times, the slow, imperceptible erosion of our connection. She talked about her loneliness, her feeling of being lost in the roles of wife and mother. She talked about the thrill of her secret life, the validation she got from the attention of other men. I talked about my betrayal, my pain, my shattered trust. It was hard. It was ugly. There were times when I wanted to walk out and never come back. But we kept at it. For Leo, for the 15 years of history we shared, for the faint, flickering hope that we could somehow find our way back to each other. I learned that forgiveness is not a destination, it's a journey. It's a conscious choice that you have to make every single day. Some days, I could almost forgive her. I could see the pain and the confusion that had driven her to do what she did. I could see the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who was still, somewhere deep down, my best friend. Other days, the anger would come roaring back, a tidal wave of resentment that threatened to drown me. I would look at her, and all I could see was Sunrise Seeker 7, the smiling liar in the red dress. The journey is far from over. I don't know if our marriage will survive. I don't know if I will ever be able to trust her completely again. The future is a question mark, a vast, uncertain landscape that stretches out before me. But I am no longer adrift. I have found my footing. I am rebuilding my reality, one painful, honest brick at a time. I have learned that love is not a fairy tale. It's a messy, complicated, and often painful business. It requires honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to confront the darkest parts of ourselves and each other.
The discovery of Olivia's secret life was the most devastating experience of my life. It was a trauma that I will carry with me forever. But it was also a catalyst. It forced me to look at my life, my marriage, and myself in a way I never had before. It forced me to confront the uncomfortable truths that I had been avoiding for years. It forced me to grow. I am not the same man I was on that ordinary Tuesday, the man who was happily cleaning up taco dishes, blissfully unaware of the fault line running through the foundation of his life. That man is gone forever. In his place is a man who is a little bit broken, a little bit wiser, and a lot more honest with himself. A man who is learning to navigate the messy, unpredictable, and ultimately beautiful reality of what it means to be human. A man who is, against all odds, learning to hope again. I still don't have all the answers. Our house is still filled with a fragile, tentative peace. We are two people trying to find our way back to each other, across a chasm of broken trust. Some days, the chasm feels too wide to cross. Other days, I can see her, on the other side, reaching for my hand. And I think, just maybe, we can build a bridge. A new bridge, a stronger bridge, a bridge built not on illusions, but on the hard, painful, and ultimately liberating truth of who we really are. It's a long and difficult road, but for the first time in a long time, I'm willing to walk it. I am willing to see where it leads. The story is not over. It is, perhaps, just beginning. A new chapter, a different story, a story that we will have to write together, one honest, painful, and hopeful word at a time. It's a story of a marriage, a betrayal, and the long, hard road to forgiveness. It's my story, and I'm still living it, every single day. The silence in our home is no longer the oppressive weight it once was. It's a space now, a space for thought, for reflection, for the slow, arduous work of healing. We talk more now than we ever did before, not just about the mundane details of our day, but about our fears, our dreams, our vulnerabilities. It's a new language for us, one we are still learning to speak, but it's an honest language, and that makes all the difference. I no longer spend my nights scrolling through her digital life. I am trying to be present in our real life, in the messy, imperfect, and beautiful reality of our shared existence. It's a daily struggle, a constant battle against the ghosts of the past. But it's a battle I am willing to fight. For Leo, for us, for the future that we might, just might, be able to build together. A future that is not a fantasy, not a carefully curated profile, but a real, honest, and authentic life. A life where we are not hiding from each other, but facing each other with all of our flaws, all of our fears, and all of our love. A love that has been tested by fire and that may, in the end, be stronger for it. Only time will tell. And for the first time in a long time, I am willing to give it that time. If you made it this far, I'd love to hear from you. What's the hardest truth you've ever had to face about someone close to you? Drop your story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Reddit Whispers for more powerful true stories.